splintered wooden barriers on the bridge at Montereau stand slick with a grey September drizzle as John the Fearless's hand slips from his bloody sword hilt. The assassination reorders the 100 Years' War overnight, forcing a broken France to sign a treaty no French king would ever have accepted. An English conqueror is named the ultimate heir to the French throne. Military campaigns will soon explode across the realm, ignited by the claustrophobic fury of Henry V's hand-to-hand combat deep inside the mines at Melun. The Lancastrian march south looks unstoppable, but the treaty carries a hidden flaw, one that no one in the cathedral at Troyes can yet see. Within months of the assassination, a broken France splits down its ancient geographic fault lines. The disinherited prince, Dauphin Charles, retreats south of the wide Loire River, holding a massive structural advantage within his loyal southern provinces. He commands a highly motivated professional Scottish army eager to bleed English forces in defense of Valois sovereignty. Furthermore, the unyielding tenets of French constitutional law guard his birthright against foreign usurpation. Anglo-Burgundian forces control the wealthy northern plains and occupied Paris, yet they face a vast, resilient kingdom that refuses to die quietly. This factional divide means the final peace is merely a blueprint for an even bloodier war. Henry V commands his professional armies to reduce the final Valois strongholds across northern France, setting the military machinery into relentless motion. The English warrior king moves with absolute purpose through the contested territories. He firmly believes that his overwhelming triumph at Agincourt and the terms of the new treaty have permanently secured a legally binding dual monarchy for his heirs. His veteran longbowmen and heavily armored men-at-arms systematically dismantle French resistance town by town. He expects total submission from a defeated aristocracy. He does not see the gathering storm south of the river. A single, flickering tallow candle stuck to a damp earthen wall in the Melun mine shaft glints weakly on Henry V's steel visor. The grueling 4-month siege of Melun forces the English into dangerous subterranean warfare against a brilliant garrison commander. Charles of France coordinates these stubborn defensive campaigns from his rival court at Baugé, flatly refusing to surrender his royal birthright to the Lancastrian invaders. Deep underground, French defenders dig countermines to intercept the English tunnels, transforming the dark galleries into suffocating chambers of hand-to-hand slaughter. The English king thrusts his sword into the pitch-black void, experiencing the true, exhausting cost of his conquest. Arnaud Guilhelm de Barbazan expects the absolute worst from his royal captor after Melun finally surrenders to starvation. The veteran knight assumes his execution is certain under the strict terms of the treaty, but he boldly invokes the sacred laws of arms. Because he and the king fought hand-to-hand in the suffocating darkness of the mines, they are bound forever as brothers in arms. Henry V accepts this chivalric argument, sparing the commander's life while the Dauphin watches from afar. Charles assumes that English military dominance is an absolute permanent reality and fears he will never regain his stolen crown. He is calculating his survival based on a terrible, fragile illusion. Henry V returns to England to secure vital financial subsidies, leaving his ambitious younger brother, Thomas, Duke of Clarence, in absolute command of Normandy. Eager to win personal military glory, Clarence launches a fast-moving, destructive raiding expedition through Maine and Anjou. He leads 4,000 men-at-arms deep into enemy territory, burning villages and exposing his lines. When his scouts capture a Scottish soldier near Baugé, the Duke learns that a massive allied army blocks his advance. He refuses to wait for his scattered longbowmen to assemble for battle. He orders a rapid, unsupported cavalry charge directly toward the enemy. The flooded marshy banks of the Couesnon River create a lethal bottleneck beneath the narrow stone bridge at Baugé. This treacherous, waterlogged terrain stands as a massive obstacle to the reckless English plan. The Duke of Clarence forces his way across the swollen river, but the soft earth quickly robs his heavy war horses of their vital momentum. A small detachment of Scottish archers holds the crossing just long enough for their main army to form an unyielding defensive line. The structural advantage shifts entirely to the defenders. The marshy traps are ready to snap shut. 1,500 heavily mounted English men-at-arms charge directly into a dense, waiting wall of 5,000 disciplined Franco-Scottish spearmen. The Earl of Buchan and Marshal Lafayette deploy their forces with absolute precision along the high ridge. The English riders flounder in the deep mud without the vital missile protection of their missing archers. Steel armor clashes violently against long ash shafts in the heavy, breathless silence of the marsh. Every knight stands locked in their assigned position. The entire vanguard is completely surrounded within minutes. Within an hour of the first clash, the myth of Lancastrian invincibility shatters entirely on the bloody shores of the Couesnon. The splintered ash shaft of John Carmichael's lance explodes into white shards against the Duke of Clarence's gilded chestplate. The unhorsed Duke is wounded in the face before a fatal mace blow crushes his skull. Over 1,000 English soldiers are slaughtered and 500 are captured as the vanguard disintegrates. The original plan to easily secure northern France fails completely. The Dauphin's political authority surges across the fractured realm. The shocking disaster at Baugé forces Henry V to return to France in June 1421 to salvage his crumbling military authority. The warrior king immediately commits his main army to the brutal 7-month siege of Meaux. This heavy operation traps his forces in a freezing, waterlogged camp along the flooding Marne River. The historic Treaty of Troyes, 1420, is now visibly in motion, but its ultimate fulfillment demands an unsustainable price in English blood. The king refuses to retreat from the stubborn stronghold. He binds his destiny to this frozen, infected wasteland. The heavily fortified stronghold of Meaux finally capitulates to the exhausted English forces in May 1422. Outraged by the long, bitter resistance, Henry V orders the garrison commander, the bastard of Vauru, to be beheaded immediately. The leafless frozen branches of the elm of Vauru creak heavily under the weight of the commander's suspended corpse against a leaden sky. This brutal victory clears the vital Seine and Marne valleys of Valois resistance. The mechanism of English triumph appears absolute. Yet, an invisible enemy is already destroying the victorious army from within. Henry V expects to march triumphantly into Paris to claim his grand double crown, but his own body betrays him. The unsanitary conditions of the prolonged siege camp breed an epidemic of severe, agonizing dysentery through the ranks. The great warrior king undergoes a rapid, humiliating physical collapse within weeks of his victory. He is no longer able to mount his war horse or wear his heavy armor. Attendants must carry the gasping monarch in a wooden litter. The conqueror of Agincourt faces an agonizing, helpless end. A single royal physician, grimly inside the vaulted stone chambers of the Château de Vincennes outside Paris. Henry V lies on his deathbed, his fading strength focused entirely on preserving his fragile empire. He displays an unyielding defiance against his approaching demise, appointing his brother Bedford as regent of France. He commands his captains to maintain the vital Burgundian alliance at all costs. The dying king calculates his succession with absolute clarity, yet he cannot alter the calendar. He draws his final, labored breath on August 31st, 1422. The sudden death of Henry V at the age of 35 plunges the Lancastrian dual monarchy into a catastrophic structural crisis. The great conqueror dies before he can ever be crowned King of France. When the mentally ill Charles VI passes away weeks later, a 10-month-old infant inherits the two mighty crowns. An infant's tiny, silver-gilt crown rests on a black velvet cushion, placed beside the cold, heavy iron crown of Saint-Denis. The Dauphin's fatal assumption that English dominance is permanent is completely shattered by this dynastic void. The entire balance of power shifts overnight. Within months of the double funeral, a deep political fracture splits the geography of the entire kingdom. The Anglo-Burgundian administration conducts a hasty coronation for the infant Henry VI in occupied Paris, but the ceremony lacks traditional legitimacy. South of the Loire, the disinherited Dauphin rejects his exclusion and boldly proclaims himself King Charles VII. He establishes a rival, defiant court at Bourges, rallying the southern nobility to his banner. The historic peace of 1420 dissolves into a protracted, vicious civil war. France now has two kings, two capitals, and one throne. Neither will yield. The sudden emergence of Joan of Arc in 1429 fundamentally alters the spiritual and military trajectory of the war. Her miraculous relief of the siege of Orléans smashes the English line and restores French confidence. She guides Charles VII to his sacred coronation in the ancient Cathedral of Reims, providing the Valois cause with absolute political legitimacy. This symbolic triumph directly invalidates the legal claims of the Treaty of Troyes. The English occupation forces begin a slow, agonizing retreat across the blood-soaked northern provinces. The momentum cannot be undone. Duke Philip the Good of Burgundy expects an English recovery, but the financial and military reality of the occupation collapses. Realizing the Lancastrian cause is permanently isolated, Philip abandons the alliance at the Treaty of Arras in 1435. He reconciles fully with Charles VII, leaving the English garrisons completely stranded. A reorganized French army, equipped with standardized gunpowder artillery under the Bureau brothers, systematically recaptures every single fortified town. The Grand Double Monarchy, built by Henry V, faces a total, humiliating military eviction. The final act approaches. Could the Lancastrian dual monarchy ever succeed if Henry V lives to inherit the French throne? Or is the French national identity already too resilient to accept a foreign king? The Grand Peace is signed in a magnificent cathedral, yet it is written in the blood of assassinations and enforced through brutal sieges. No legal document can erase centuries of Valois tradition. The legal concept of the inalienability of the crown stands as an unyielding wall against English ambitions. The great warrior's dream dies long before his final battle. And how does the French deployment of standardized gunpowder artillery under the Bureau brothers systematically dismantle the English garrisons, culminating at the decisive Battle of Castillon in 1453? The legendary English longbow, which dominates the fields of Agincourt, cannot match the destructive power of modern French cannons. John Talbot's veteran forces are utterly annihilated by explosive barrages along the Dordogne riverbank. A single rusted iron billhook lies half buried in the thick October mud as the relentless tide washes over it. The long war reaches its absolute smoking conclusion. The Treaty of Troyes, 1420, once hailed as the final peace, ends in absolute total defeat at Castillon, proving that dynamic military power cannot permanently override constitutional law and deep-seated national identity. The Grand Dual Monarchy collapses entirely, leaving Calais as the sole English possession on the continent. The defeated English forces retreat across the Channel, exhausted and broken by decades of futile continental ambitions. The road from Castillon leads directly to England, where a humiliated, bankrupt crown faces a devastating internal civil war. The fall of English Gascony runs directly to the shores of Great Britain, and to a dynastic collapse 2 years later that will ignite the bloody wars of the Roses. Subscribe to stay with this series. The next engagement is already in production. If you are watching on a television screen, the QR code on screen now will take you directly to the subscribe button on your phone.